Hi, Kate here with another video. Hope you're doing well. There's actually a slight do-over. I have 131 subscribers, and I thank everyone who's subscribed. If you're enjoying my content, please like and subscribe. Helps me build the channel. Okay, this is on internet censorship in the U.S., and according to some sources, it's the censorship, media press censorship is the worst it's ever been in American history. And I'm going to discuss some examples. Recently, as many people know, PayPal, online payment system, blocked Caleb Maupin, Alan McLeod, Mint Press News, Consortium News, which is a venerable altered media site, has a very good reputation. There's a really interesting article or blog entry by Jim Kavanaugh of the Polemicist. I've interviewed Jim Kavanaugh 3 times before. Really, I think the guy has a lot of insight. He's sometimes writes for Counterpunch. He's also on Loud and Clear with Brian Becker and Political Misfits, and also I believe on Press TV and other outfits. The guy has a lot of insight, and I enjoy it. Now, I enjoy reading his stuff. His recent blog entry on this is what I'm going to read. It's really short, an introduction to what's been going on here. So it's what good are notebooks? Life during wartime censorship. This is goofing on the Talking Heads song, like on Life During Wartime. So he says, after seeing the news about and doing a radio segment on the new Disinformation Governance Board and PayPal blocking the accounts of Caleb Maupin, Minair Adley, who's the founder and editor of Mint Press News, Alan McLeod and Mint Press News, I now see that PayPal has, quote, permanently limited and may seize the account of Consortium News because of, get this, potential risk associated with this account. This is utterly outrageous and true political censorship. Consortium News, founded in 1995 by the late, great Robert Parry, and continuing under Joe Lauria, has been and still is one of the most honest, trustworthy, unimpeachable sources of information and analysis in the world. Infinitely more trustworthy and unassailable than the New York Times and NPRs of the world. You can say that again to CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, that they're all, they're all crap. So it is completely ridiculous and obviously hollow pretext to brand it as a potential risk to anything but ignorance. Just as a point, yeah, the PayPal seized $10,000 of Consortium News's money in PayPal. It's an online payment system, and often clients don't take all their money. They clean it out every month or so routinely, but apparently, PayPal apparently can legally seize what's in it. It's theirs until you take it out. So apparently they seized $10,000 of Consortium News's assets. They apparently agreed to return it recently after a big uproar, but they would lose a lot of credibility. But so, and now, it's completely ridiculous and obviously hollow pretext to brand it as a potential risk to anything but ignorance. Of course, that's the point. The United States government and the ideological and financial apparatuses of the state are now blatantly determined to keep you ignorant of anything about what they want you to hear. There is a risk that people will hear something true that smashes the heavily tinted Overton window. The Overton window is like the bounds of discourse, or bounds of something. In this case, of the bounds of discourse, and whether move broader, smaller, move to the left, move to the right. They want to narrow the mainstream corporate media and the powers that be are narrowing the Overton window, very, very narrow area. Here we are. So, yes, the establishment of a Ministry of Truth within the Department of Homeland Security, and I'll talk about that in a minute, a repressive state apparatus coordinated, and you have to be quite a fool to think it's not coordinated with the sanctions come home blockage of the paltry sums independent journalists and media platforms barely get by on, is part of what is now a full court censorship offensive. Yeah, they're definitely on the attack against alternate media, left, center, libertarian, right, whatever. They're definitely. So this is actually a program of wartime censorship. I agree. Again, one would have to be a fool to not say this is coordinated with Secretary of State Antony Blinken and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin's visit to Zelensky, where they declared the U.S. objective of, quote, of permanently weakening Russia and providing all the arms and training to make sure Ukraine wins, and with the congressional delegation's visit, where Nancy Pelosi declared that, quote, America stands firmly with Ukraine, is, quote, fight for freedom. In other words, it's a program of wartime censorship whose objective is to solicit Americans' consent for doing whatever is necessary to ensure Kiev's victory, including entering and escalating war with Russia. Yeah, I think there's a good chance this could escalate. Jim Kavanaugh mentioned that this in previous blog entry. The dynamics of the Russia-Ukraine war are it's going to expand. There's already buzz that Poland and possibly Romania may get involved on their own, maybe not because of NATO, not on behalf of NATO, but on their own. There may be the logic of it, I think, moves towards a general war between US and Russia, which would be another catastrophe, but the momentum seems to be moving in that direction. I hope I'm wrong. And this is clamping down censorship discourse and things like that. So the very real potential risk is that Joe Lauria and Consortium News, or Caleb Maupin, Maner Adley, Alan McLeod, and Mid-Press News will do what Julian Assange and WikiLeaks did. Tell some truths that might undermine the case for a war based on lies. Can't have that. Ain't got time for that now. Shut them up and shut them down. Have to make people understand it's already life during wartime. Consortium News is one too many, but not the final straw. We are in a lot of trouble, and it's going to get a lot worse. Yeah, I agree. Rage is the appropriate attitude towards this machine. Another music pun there. Everyone, and certainly everyone on the left who jumped on the censorship train the minute it left Alex Jones station, who, because what good are they, enjoyed the ride through Trump Twitter territory, Robert Malone Pass, and Joe Rogan Ravine, should have known where it was going, should be ashamed ever to have boarded it, should now loudly and explicitly say so, get the fuck off and work hard to derail it right now, or forever hold your peace about being in any way progressive. I think he's right. I think, yeah, sadly, that's the way it is. This whole thing, not the whole thing, but a lot of it was this internet censorship was given impetus by the Alex Jones. He was completely deplatformed in 2018. Alex Jones comes off as a lunatic. He was a right-wing character radicalized by the Waco massacre. And he's famous for InfoWars. And at the very, as I understand, at the very beginning, he may have done some legitimate journalism, but he rapidly became a bizarre right-wing caricature. He rants about gay frogs or child slave colonies on Mars. I mean, come on, he's so. Yeah, he's pretty. Anyway, whole in 2018, he had this campaign. He claimed the Sandy Hook. The Sandy Hook was a staged event. The grieving parents were crisis actors, and he apparently encouraged people to harass the parents. And it was definitely over the top, sure, but a lot of people did say that there are better ways of handling this. Like you could take legal action against Jones, the parents, or class actions suit, have a class action suit against him. They could shut him down legally. Go through, what he does, what he was doing was offensive, what did break the law, was encouraging harassment. He just set some legal guidelines. But what happened instead is the Silicon Valley just took it in its own hands and just unilaterally just banned him. I don't have sympathy for Alex Jones, but the way they did it, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, all of a sudden coordinated. He had a huge following, by the way, a large, just a marginal figure, pretty large following. They just unilaterally just banned him. And this sets not that I like Alex Jones, but this sets a very, very, very big precedent. And the other things that Jim Kavanaugh mentioned add to this as well. I don't want to go into it too much, but also add to it. Now, some other stuff besides the people I mentioned who recently been banned, or been not banned, but been censored, or Lee Camp. No, yeah, RT America was shut down a few months ago. I don't get cable, I haven't watched it regularly, but I did enjoy some of the shows. I saw them on Rockfin or elsewhere, sometimes YouTube or Rockfin. RT America was shut down, and I felt bad. There was a bad thing. RT was mixed. A lot of people would on Facebook were cheering on shutting it down. They did have some right-wing content. Yeah, it did have some documentary, which was transphobic or some. They did have a lot of weird right-wing stuff, but they had some left-wing stuff. So Chris Hedges, Lee Camp, a variety of other people, and you don't get that anyplace else. I mean, American people, the average American public, have a very narrow, even on cable, have a very narrow range of news outlet. So it became even narrower, and people like Caleb Maupin, Lee Camp, and Chris Hedges, a few others, they had really interesting shows on there, and now they don't anymore. So these people, I know Caleb Maupin he's no connection with RT at all, not employed by them, but he still has his Twitter handle, his Russian state media. Like, he has nothing to do with Russian state media. This is Russian state media. So, and a few other people like that too. On Twitter, a permanent Twitter label. Lee Camp was a guy who was on RT America, leftist comedian. He says he calls himself the most censored comedian in America. He's been also attacked a lot. I believe PayPal cut him off. A lot of his material on YouTube was taken down. On my previous video, I mentioned the Daily Beast. They attacked Gonzalo Lira, put out a poorly written smear piece on him, essentially alerted the Ukrainian government. He was probably the harshest English language critic of the corruption of the Ukrainian government. So they wrote a guy, Martin Hay, wrote this really horrible smear piece on him. And they said, we're contacting the Ukrainian government to find information on him. So essentially trying to get him killed. He's their harshest English language critic, and it is a pretty brutal, horrible situation. They're trying to get him killed, and he vanished for about 6 or 7 days. So the same Daily Beast is attacking Lee Camp as well. They wrote some smear pieces about him. Anybody who's attacking, he's a Russian agent, he's a Russian bot. They write these weird smear pieces. Chris Hedges had a interview show on Contact. He interviewed, I would watch it. He had some amazing interviews, Chomsky, but a whole bunch of people he interviewed, really interesting. They took his archival footage off YouTube. I hope somebody still has it somewhere, but it's been taken off YouTube, just yanked off with no warning. That was pretty horrible. And increasingly wrapped up all kinds of censorship. Lee Camp was taken off Patreon. The list of people are just incredible. Okay, also, another British rapper, Loki, has been censored, taken off PayPal, and taken off a lot of social media. He's apparently close to Mint-Press News in some ways. Let's see, where are we? Okay, now also, Google algorithms, roughly by the time Trump got in, they began delimiting or lowering the ratings. It's been hard to get of alternate media, any type of alternate media. And they saw like around 2018, 2016, 2017 or so, their views of alternate media, online alternate media, rapidly plummeted. The World Socialist website, their viewership plummeted. Mint-Press News, the Gray Zone, anything just plummeted. The algorithms were like limiting them, definitely Google algorithms were definitely designed and to limit the viewership of alternate media. That's definitely censorship form of censorship as well. So, okay, so this is another article. I'm just going to read parts of it. Some Scheer post. It's a project of Robert Scheer. Now, Robert Scheer is a legendary leftist journalist. He edited Ramparts magazine in the 60s and 70s, is a classic. Since that time, he collaborated partly with Chris Hedges, with Truthdig online journal, which was interesting to read. Well, I think around 2018, there was an internal coup in Truthdig, and he and Chris Hedges were pushed out. Truthdig is still around, but they've been closer to the Democratic Party now. It's a liberal coup. They're back Democratic, following Democratic Party narratives. And Robert Scheer started a new project called Scheer Post, which he has some interesting stuff. I do read it sometimes. Interestingly, something like that happened with Real News Network by Paul Jay was the founder, and they had some really interesting stuff. I used to watch. It was better than Democracy Now. But anyway, there was also an internal coup in Real News Network. Paul Jay was forced out, and the team that took it over again oriented more to the Democratic Party, more mainstream narratives or mainstream liberalism. And Paul Jay started a different media. But it was kind of sad. It was basically his life's work, and he was pushed out. It was really sad. Alternate media is under attack from the outside and also internally. It can come anywhere. Pacifica Radio, a leftist alternate media network, they've long had big internal fights. They've started Democracy Now! In the 90s. Democracy Now! Has gone much more to the Democratic Party. They're not really leftist anymore. But anyway, I'm going to read part of this article by Joe Lauria. He's the editor of Consortium News. It's on Scheer Post. And Joe Lauria interviews Robert Scheer. And so here we go. Scheer Intelligence, quote, has been reporting on the rise of censorship in the internet age in a number of ways since the podcast was started in 2015. Now host Robert Scheer is concerned that under the cloak of the Ukraine conflict, all forms of alternative media on the internet could soon be eliminated. Examples already abound: archival videos of Chris Hedges' RT show, quote, On Contact, the interview show, which is really good stuff, was taken down from YouTube. Social media companies like Twitter and Facebook have been shutting down any posts that challenge mainstream narratives on the Ukraine conflict. Google AdSense recently informed publishers, including Mint Press News, that, quote, due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war, lumping any pieces that question the NATO narrative on Ukraine into the content describes. And now both Mint Press News and Consortium News, two longstanding independent media websites founded by veteran journalists, have been banned from taking donations via PayPal. And it goes on to discuss the career of its career here. So anyway, yeah, Consortium News was actually the first news site at all to get on the internet, seriously, before the New York Times, like just literally a couple days before the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post got on. They were the first to get on the internet. They have a long, venerable reputation. So there's increasing crackdown on these sort of alternate media figures. Facebook, the articles didn't mention that, but Facebook has been doing this since I don't know, 2016 or so. Earlier, they took off, Cop Block, which was mostly a libertarian group which observed police brutality. They followed and filmed pretty egregious samples of police brutality. They had many local offshoots, they were completely taken off of Facebook. That was one of the great things about Facebook when I first got on it, but Cop Block was taken off. Black Lives Matter groups were taken off. Anything, the narratives that they don't like, questioning narratives, whatever narratives they're pushing. The Socialist Workers' Party, British Socialist Workers' Party, for a while was taken off YouTube. They kind of put some of it back, but the censorship is egregious. Now, YouTube and Facebook, you can say there are alternatives, of course, but they're legacy media in a way. Like YouTube, when you get a phone, like a smartphone, it always has the app on, the YouTube app on it, the Facebook app on it, like everybody's on it. They both have the critical mass, like their other social media platforms, such as Facebook. Facebook really sucks in a lot of ways, but everybody's already on Facebook. They have the critical mass. So that's what we're working against. So there was So as I mentioned, the Department, Jim Kavanaugh mentioned, the Department of Homeland Security very recently announced so they have, and I forget the name of it, it's like a department within the DHS of fighting disinformation. It's called, yeah, sorry, it's called the Disinformation Governance Board, which is bizarre. Disinformation Governance Board, and the head of the Disinformation Governance Board, was supposed to fight disinformation, however you define that. The head is a woman named Nina Jankowicz. Now, I'll post a link to it. Max Blumenthal and Jimmy Dore had a discussion. They're still on YouTube, surprisingly. Jimmy Dore and Max Blumenthal cross the bounds all the time on everything. I think they're like daring YouTube to take them down. And YouTube, they probably will, but YouTube is really reluctant. Dore is huge. Once you take down Dore, there'll be X's from YouTube. So these two guys are kind of chomping at roughing edges. I mean, they know there's censorship. They're kind of going against it, just borderline pushing as much as they can. It's fair that both guys have a lot of guts. They are fighting this. So anyway, they're talking about Nina Jankowicz. She's close ties with the U.S. security state. She's basically a color revolution person. She worked for, before this job with the DHS, she worked for an organization, forget the name of it. There's the National Endowment for Democracy, which was basically a CIA cutout, because direct CIA involvement in countries was very unpopular. So the Endowment for Democracy was founded. They were led by this guy originally, Carl Gershman, who was like a right-wing Shachtmanite, odd political grouping that came out of the Trotskyist movement, but they went very far to the right. So anyway, this Endowment for Democracy, they have another offshoot, and I forget the name of it, but this Nina Jankowicz works for it. She was an advisor to the Ukrainian government. So she's a color revolution person. She's part of the security state apparatus. She also was famous for sowing disinformation herself. She was a big Russiagator, huge Russiagate person. She attacked alternate media, the gray zone. She consistently attacks alternate media. She attacked the Hunter Biden story, said there was like Russian disinformation, what turned out it was accurate. So many areas. It's on the Jimmy Dore episode I'll post. Has this bizarre video where she's singing like Julie Andrews, like a spoonful of Mary Poppins, a spoonful of sugar helps medicine go on, a version of it. And if she's actually singing, I got to admit, she is pretty talented. She was singing about disinformation. It's kind of bizarre, though. There's a government official singing this like trippy, bizarre song. And it's just so weird. It's so cringy. And Max Blumenthal is saying, these people in there, it sounds cringy to everyone else, but small group of people involved in this is totally illogical. And Max Blumenthal talked about some of the, and so anyways, Nina Jankowicz, her job is going to be essentially, it's a ministry of propaganda. It's putting forth supposedly fighting disinformation about Syria, about just about everything else. But I think it's mostly going to be oriented toward, not Syria, Ukraine, oriented towards Ukraine. If there's a full-scale U.S. war with them. Anyway, it's oriented towards that. And she's been sowing disinformation herself all the time. Disinformation is just a narrative that you don't like. It's someone else's narrative. So it's so bizarre. Now, Max Blumenthal is talking about the material basis behind this. Like the people behind the censorship job, it's the Democratic Party. It's solidly the Democratic Party. Very oddly, the right wing is now old style liberals. They're playing the role of old style liberals, fighting for free speech absolutism, against censorship. This is something the liberals used to do. It's been a weird role reversal in a lot of ways. Now, liberals, I mean journalists, pundits, politicians, whatever, are the ones who are crying for censorship and cracking down, while people on the right are fighting against it. No, we need more dialogue, more diverse opinion. And anyway, this whole government state, Silicon Valley, corporate security state thing is attempting to fight both the left and the right, keep it to its authoritarian centrism. And the material basis of the Democratic Party is largely with PMC, the professional managerial class. They're called laptop left or petty bourgeois layer, NPR liberals, the managerial class, often people high-tech jobs themselves, employees of Silicon Valley. That's largely the constituency now of the Democratic Party. That's who they do, and they're terrified of the American people. Like they sense there's a lot of rage and discontent out there. They're scared of it. And they see it all as weird conspiracy theories from the left or the right, mostly the right. This is weird mass of you get to fly over country. It's all these conspiracy theories and lunatic. And what they do, any hint of populism, they're terrified and they have to crack down. They want to crack down. They feel very, very scared of this and they want to crack down. Max Blumenthal was saying, in a way, this is a very good thing because these people feel very insecure about their places. Ultimately, it's out of desperation. This media crackdown is out of so it's really out of desperation. And also, the interesting thing is, who's the Democrats are setting this up, and if Trump or the Republicans get back in, I forget her name. Who these? Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congressperson from Georgia. She's right wing. She's really unhinged. What if in a future Trump administration, Marjorie Taylor Greene is running this, whatever it's called, the disinformation governance board? What if Marjorie Taylor Greene is running? Democrats are like that. It's so weird. Now, so the material basis of what's going on is so out of desperation in a way, which is in some ways a good thing, but it's still pretty disturbing. Now, finally, there's Twitter and Elon Musk, which was the kind of title of his YouTube video. I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but he's probably bought out Twitter for, I believe, it was $44 billion, if I remember. Liberals are just freaking out. Liberals, CNN, sort of like shit with tears. It's kind of fun to watch in some ways, even love leftists, Mark Provost, who really liberals who claim to be leftists, people like Mark Provost or other people more identify with Democratic Party narratives. They're really freaking out about this. Now, Elon Musk is saying, I want to restore free speech. Elon Musk is odd character. Well, he's apparently he's the richest man in the world right now. During the pandemic lockdown, of the 2 years, his net worth increased 600 times. Other oligarchs did as well. Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, and so on. They did okay, but Elon Musk, amazingly, he did amazing well. He apparently owns part of the share in mRNA vaccines, as far as I know. He said a few things appealing to libertarians. He opposed the lockdowns and supposedly free speech. During the GameStop thing about a year ago, I was seeing people were buying small amount of GameStop, small investors were buying GameStop, shares of GameStop. They started sort of getting back the big guys, the hedge fund. There was an element of populism involved in that. Well, Elon, they were often they had been active in Occupy. They really, they saw it as a form of populist uprising in a way, small investors against the big guys. Well, Elon Musk was a hero among these people, undeservedly so. Now, can Elon Musk save us? Well, actually, no. I mean, apparently he bought Twitter and liberals are freaking out, which is fun to watch. And some people are getting, Twitter censorship was getting way out of hand. So many people on the left and the right were just being booted off. And liberals want to keep it as like a liberal playpen, a Democratic Party playpen. That's Twitter's their reserve. Anything they don't like is disinformation, essentially. And I'm on the left. I'm on the far left. I don't like the far right. I'm on the left, but I think you talk to people. Not everything is the Battle of Cable Street. So anyway, think about Elon Musk though is a good frank analysis. Interviewed Jason Burmis. He's done some interesting work. Basically, Elon Musk himself is embedded in the security state in the military industrial complex. His SpaceX is primarily a military contractor. They're not going to send people to Mars. His idea, Elon Musk's idea for a space colony on Mars is nonsense. It's not workable. Science fiction writer Kim Stanley Robinson, who wrote very well-written technical science fiction about colonizing Mars, and he's something of a leftist. Kim Stanley Robinson, he's like the expert on Mars colonization, said that Elon Musk's ideas are complete nonsense. But okay, and apparently he's been working on the electric car thing for the past 10 years, hasn't really gone anywhere. He hasn't made any money on it, as far as I know. Well, other more legitimate entrepreneurs, if there are legitimate entrepreneurs, more legitimate business have been working on electric cars, been pushed out of the field, largely by Elon Musk. So in some ways, Elon Musk is a phony. He's a major, huge military contractor. That's where he makes most of his money. He sells stuff to NASA, and NASA is civilian stuff, but they're also largely military. So SpaceX, military cargo, including a transmission link, which is used in Ukraine by the Ukrainian military, by the way. And Elon Musk kind of bizarrely said he wants to challenge Putin to a wrestling match or something like that, something really bizarre. And Elon Musk finally has a Neuralink project, like a sort of odd, kind of odd project, brain plant a chip in your brain, some of the weird science fiction stuff, and some of the stuff is kind of scary. Jason Burmis goes on, there's this like a great reset agenda as part of this agenda. I don't know, take that for what it's worth, but I'm not going to count on a billionaire to save us, a multi-billionaire savior. I mean, it's not where it's at. The working class can only be the agent of its own liberation. I think it's probably good more people being allowed on Twitter. I think it's also a good thing. I'm not complaining about that. I think it does put off the day when an alternative to Twitter can be found, though. That's one problem too. Telegram. I got on Telegram recently, and it's censorship free, and the format is like halfway between Facebook and YouTube. You can post videos, you can share stuff. It's censorship free. There's a lot of Russian stuff on there. I've been following the Ukraine war. Also, Ukrainians put a lot of stuff on there. There are a lot of narratives. It isn't any sense. It's possible to censor it. I'm worried about my YouTube channel being deleted if there's a full-scale war with US and Russia. I don't think there will be, but there could be. Everything will be over. I mean, all social media be just completely scrubbed very rapidly. But we're inching towards that. Anyway, yeah. So anyway, I'm skeptical about. The Elon famous thing. He smoked a doobie on the Joe Rogan show. Apparently, Joe Rogan later said that was really tobacco laced with marijuana. Joe Rogan himself, Elon Musk himself. Some of his employees complained that he has a very strict drug policy himself. Like any of his employees doing it, they're constantly tested. Any of his employees did something like that, they'd be fired. He's pulling the stunt. And interestingly, shares of stock plummeted right after he pulled that antic. It's unclear why he did it, actually. But and okay, now so we'll see how we'll see how things go. I'm skeptical about Elon Musk, but it is probably a good thing. But I'm not going to hold my breath for a billionaire savior. Anyway, that's it. A little shorter video. Hope you've enjoyed it, and have a good day. Thank you.